segment called SLOP News. Well, technically this isn't new. This is just like a way for me to be like, oh, hey, yeah, I'm just gonna, just do little quick videos like this, just give my little commentary on it. But yeah, so today we'll be talking about Borderlands 4 on Switch 2 will mostly run at 30 frames per second. And this is the game that they want to put at 80 bucks, by the way. This is the game that they want to put at 80 bucks. Hey, 80 bucks, but we're going to let a game run at 30 fucking frames per second. I don't care if it's a Switch 2. You could optimize it better to make it run better. But you know what? This kind of tells you right here and now how the Switch 2 is basically a more expensive and less and a console with less freedom than even the Switch 1, you know? This is a shittier, more expensive version of what you had back in 2017 in today's times is what I'm trying to say, right? Because look at this, man. You're having the same exact issues. You know? I said this before the Switch 2 was even announced. I already said this shit. That the Switch 2 will be a Switch 1 all over again. We're going to have games run like ass on it, but it's more expensive. I already said it. I said that was going to be an underpowered, overpriced piece of shit, and that's exactly what it is. Yep, so let's get into the news, shall we, I guess? Borderlands 4 locked in a release date for Switch 2 earlier today, with Gearbox boss Randy Bitchford confirming it will be arriving at the 3rd of October 2025. Whoa, dude, can't wait. Mark your calendars, boys. Now, in an interview with Gay Radar Plus, Pitchford has shared some additional details about the upcoming Nintendo release. Firstly, the Switch game will run at mostly around 30 frames per second, with the supposed dips and more intense moments. Well, that's kind of a problem, isn't it? Right? Because the intense moments is what you kind of play Borderlands for. In fact, that's what you play a first-person game in general for. And it's like, what do you mean in intense moments? You mean when elemental attacks are happening, or whatever special attack or special ability that your character is performing? You mean that? Or when there's like a bunch of enemies on screen, like what you're talking about that? So what, is it going to be as bad as the Vita version for Borderlands 2? No, I'm kidding. It's probably not going to be that bad. But what I'm trying to say is that, like, this is absolutely hilarious. Like, for a game like this where you want as many frames per second as possible, and they're not even able to give you 60 frames per second with Nintendo's brand spanking new console. It's like, the Switch 2 should have released as a Switch Pro back in 2022. I already said this multiple times. I said this so many times. The Switch 2 should have not been what it is now. The Switch 2 should have been a dual screen console that's as powerful as the PS5. Yeah, fuck off. They'll have a lot more longevity with that. So eat shit and shut up. I'm sick and tired of people being like, that's going to be overly expensive. Don't worry about it. You're the dumb fan or fanboy, so shut the fuck up. Me as a fan want that from Nintendo. And that would have had them have a lot more longevity. Like I said, look how much the Switch 1, look how much money the Switch 1 made. Imagine if it had more longevity to it, like say if it was as powerful as a PS4. That thing would have went further and beyond. Like, they wouldn't even need a Switch 2 right now, Oh, excuse me, goddamn, I hate it when my shit does that. Anyways, yeah, like, if the Switch 1 was more powerful, they wouldn't even need a Switch 2 right now. But here they are, needing to start over, having a lot more controversy now than they ever have before with the Switch 1. And it's like, yeah, it's not looking good for you, Nintendo. It's really not looking good for you. Your sales will plummet. I'm not saying the Switch 2 will fail, but it will plummet. Like, I think it will meet at least 3DS numbers. And I'm okay with that, because the Switch 3 is going to have even less than that, depending on what they do. So, it's going to fail eventually. Hopefully. Anyways, with this being said, it's like, dude, the point of something like Borderlands is to have more action on the screen, as much action as possible, in a much smoother way as possible. And the fact that the Switch 2 can't do that, that's a fucking problem. And what, it's going to say mostly runs at 30 frames? What does that even mean? So what, it's going to run at 60 in more tame like type of like scenarios, situations, right? And then it's going to dip to 30 when there's more characters or explosions or whatever happening in the background. That's a problem. That's a huge problem, actually. I mean, don't get me wrong. If it was like, 60 to 50 frames per second, I mean, whatever, it's a console, but it's like, that shouldn't even happen, but whatever. Like, it's a console. But we're talking about a whole dip. Like, that's 30 whole frames down. So it's like, what I'm trying to say is that even though the 30 is not horrible, you're still going to feel the dip because it's from 60 to 30, you know? That's the same exact thing that happened with the PC port in the beginning, at least, of Final Fantasy VII Remake. Final Fantasy VII Remake ran, it had frame stutters. It had frame stutters that were from, like, even if you were able to run the game at, say, 120 frames, if it dipped to 90, you still felt the dip. You know what I mean? So this is going to be no exception. Even though the 90 is amazing, it's like a 90 frames per second is great. It's actually really good. The problem is that the dip from 120 to 90, you felt that. You felt that dip. You know? So what do you think 60 to 30 is going to feel? Horrible. It's going to feel horrible, especially in a real-time game like Borderlands 2, you know? So, yeah, I don't see this really going well, Nintendo. Yep. Anyways, so let's just try to read the rest. This reportedly follows previous comments from Pitchford about how the new entry was aiming for 60 FPS on consoles, with the final decision about the frame rate in the Switch 2 version apparently based on the developer not wanting to cut anything. Why did they need to... Oh, hold on. Including crossplay support. Why did they need to cut anything? Why did they need to do that? You know? Like, I'm not even completely blaming Borderlands 4 on this. I'd really blame Nintendo more so. I fucking knew that the Switch 2 was an underpowered piece of shit. I knew it was going to be. And you dumb Nintendo fanboys were praising this thing up and down, especially you, Nintendo Prime, or whatever that fat fuck was. I knew that you did it. I mean, I knew that you guys were just overreacting. I knew it. I fucking knew it. You know? And you said, oh my god, the Switch 2 is going to be so powerful. You know what they said. Fucking morons. Anyways, you know, and you're probably saying, oh, you're too hard on them. Stop. You don't have to call them that. No, I will call them that because they're annoying, disingenuous retards who keep, like lying to people about how great something is going to be because they worship that piece of plastic. You have any idea how pathetic that is? Okay, so it's kind of like me saying, "Oh, dude, like I really love this Mercedes car, but that Mercedes car is so fucking bad." But then I recommended it to you. Like I said, dude, get excited about this car, even though I know it's gonna be a piece of shit. Dude, you really need to get all your savings and buy this car. You're like, all right, man. Oh, sorry. All right, man. I mean, if you say so, like you're claiming to be the car expert here. Okay, cool. I guess I'll listen to you. And then you get it, and it's a shitty car that like is overly excessive or doesn't do what you really want it to do, and is for the price that you bought it for. That's exactly what the Switch 2 is. And that's exactly what that situation is. It's like, it's disingenuous lying because what? I was a Mercedes fanboy, so I screwed you over. Like, it's just so stupid. It's so dumb. You know? That's exactly how Nintendo fanboys work. And I'm sick and tired of them. Especially because I used to love Nintendo. They used to be my console of choice, really. Especially in the Wii days. And the DS days. But nah, man. Now you got, like, the Switch 2. Honestly being the worst out of all the consoles. Even Xbox. Like, at least Xbox, you can fucking emulate most of Nintendo's games with the developer mode, if I'm being honest. Like, you can play more Nintendo games on your Xbox than you can on the Switch 2. Like, shit. Through developer mode. I don't know if they took that out or whatever. I haven't played my Xbox. And I emulate everything on my Steam Deck or PC. So, I don't know. And phone sometimes. So, I don't know. But, But I will say that that is actually very interesting, right? Like, if that is still a thing, then wouldn't that be interesting, right? Man, I mean, this is just pathetic. Yeah, I'm ending it here because there's really not much to say other than Nintendo fanboys are hypocrites. The Switch 2 is an absolute joke, and I'm not even planning on getting it whatsoever. And no, unlike other YouTubers, I'm not gonna lie to you guys in your face about that. I mean it. I'm not buying the Switch 2. Like, seriously. There's no reason to, and you know what? Even in general, I'm not going to buy it, even when it does get quote unquote good, because I'm not gonna have any risk of Nintendo bricking my fucking console because I dared to like rub the fans the wrong way or something. I don't know. I really don't know. So, yeah, yeah. You already lost someone who was, by the way, like playing mostly on the Switch when I was on PC, right? Like when it came to consoles, I was actually mostly on the Switch. And I have a lot of games for the Switch. But you know what? You have lost that support, Nintendo. And I'm no longer ever going to support your shitty ass hardware or shitty ass games, especially with the way they are now. So, yep, that's all I really have to say on the matter. Other like I knew I was right. I knew I was right all along. The Switch 2 sucks. Blah blah blah. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all the good stuff, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.